Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Jim Blow, your host. Very pleased to have joining me today and Bannister, City Council member from Ward 1 in Ann Arbor. Welcome to Conversations.
Thank you.
And you're a newly elected, relatively newly elected member to City Council here, having taken office officially, November 20th?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Why City Council? What's your background that led you first to deciding to run and then going ahead and doing it? How long have you been in Ann Arbor?
I came to Ann Arbor in 1974 and attended the Ann Arbor Public Schools, Patton Gill, Tappan, Huron.
Okay.
And bought my home in Ward 1 back in 1990, coming up on 30 years or so ago.
Right.
And I'd always been sort of a local activist. I have been the co-chair of the Ann Arbor City Democratic Party, where I focused on voter education and access to elected officials. And
behind the scenes is what it sounds like.
Behind the scenes.
Right. And while you get into arguments among some people in Ann Arbor that I figure if you went to elementary school and above, you may not have been a native born Ann Arborite, but you've been here long enough to justify yourself as a true Ann Arborite.
Yes.
Why do you take that step from behind the scenes, working politically and helping other candidates and working for the perspective of the Democratic Party, to putting yourself forward? Because it is a whole different thing to step forward and be out in front.
Yes.
What led to that decision?
Well, I think a precipitating event was the April 17th vote last year, when the existing city council sold the public land next to the downtown library. Okay. Yeah. And that got a lot of local activists concerned, and a lot of the residents were interested to see different voices on council, more healthy debate. And so whether the voter understood all the opaqueness of the issues themselves, they were attracted to having different voices.
Okay, and looking at that, not only the vote on the selling of the land and what's referred to as the library lot, even though it's the city that owns it, because sometimes people get confused and think it's part of the library and it's not. But also other aspects of development in the downtown. That seems to be, over the last most likely 3 to 5 years, one of 2 or 3 issues that become more, not controversial, but debated.
Yes.
And why was it such an issue for you?
Well, I think that all of the issues that I was elected on, which concern the development, the sale of public-owned land, and I think I represent the neighborhood voices that would like those sort of decisions to be on the ballot for the public to decide with regard to development. Affordability, keeping Ann Arbor affordable, and how we achieve that in the future, and transparency, communication, transparency of the information, which feeds back into voter education and communication.
Right. So you mentioned the April vote of a year ago.
Yes.
That led to that led to you making the decision. Walk us through, when you decided that potentially you were going to run for actual office, have a different voice. If a person watching today thinks, well, gee, that's something I might consider, what were the steps that you took to get you to the point to actually taking out petitions and deciding to step forward and run?
Yes, well, I do. I encourage. I encourage people from all of the wards to consider running, and I would caveat that it can be basically a full-time job done right. To attend all of these meetings and all. And I think what people should consider is if they have support from various factions within their ward and around the city, different neighborhood groups. Right. So I think that I want to thank all the people who supported me and continue to support me, and I'm doing my best, to deliver.
But between April and August, because August did you have a primary within the Democratic Party?
In August, I did.
In August, right. So your campaign, in many ways, was going to be determined in the primary in August, because there was not a Republican who had filed.
Correct.
I can't recall, did you have an independent or anyone else at all on the ballot?
No.
Okay, so truly, August was going to be the deciding. What did you do to get in a position to win the primary? What kind of activities in the campaign were you involved in?
Yes, that was almost eons ago. Let's see. What I was, well, I had a lot of different Ward 1 neighbors who had skin in the game, if you will, where it makes it much easier for a candidate to campaign if you're going door to door with a friendly neighbor. Then you're not a stranger on the porch. You're coming around with people who are known and respected in their neighborhoods.
Right.
So I had quite a few pockets of that going on. And
now you mentioned door to door. That is still the mode of campaigning at the local level that most likely is not only expected but needed to be able to get your name identification perception out to the voters.
Yes. And I want to thank all the folks who put up a Bannister yard sign.
Right.
There was a yard sign war going on over the ward. And so, yes, going door to door, talking, introducing yourself, looking them in the eye, all of that was, as you mentioned, is still key, especially for the candidate.
Right. And in going door to door, did you go with the intent of sharing with the voter what your views were, or were you more interested in hearing, you might say, what they had to say and not biasing them from the beginning by saying, well, this is what I stand for?
It was more the former, where I was listening to what were their concerns for their city council representative and how could I amplify their voices.
Right. And in looking at that, did you hear issues that would be identified as predominantly first ward issues or citywide issues? Because sometimes that gets into the question of, you represent a ward, but obviously there are certain issues which go across all 5 wards.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of development happening in Ward 1. Yeah. So because of that, a lot of the issues are Ward 1 issues. So I think, the citizens' concern, some issues though, like the oversight coming up in 2018 issues, the oversight of the police and such, that's a citywide issue. But the development issues, a lot of them were Ward 1.
And just Ward 1 is what geographic region of the city?
Well, the 5 wards are pie-shaped pieces coming out from the downtown library.
Okay.
And so Ward 1 is a great ward, and it comes going north. If you're looking at the map, it's a pie piece heading north, and it encompasses Pontiac Trail, Traver, and Broadway. Okay, yeah. And the river is going through
Ward. A large part of that, right. And it goes as far west as what? Not quite Maple Road?
It gets jagged on there.
Okay,
Spring Street is a divider.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And then Newport Road.
And it goes zigzagging around, right.
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned development of the downtown is a critical aspect of the first ward. What discussion, what areas of the downtown fit within your ward? And especially when you're dealing with the downtown, the development may technically be in a different ward, but it's going to clearly impact the whole downtown. The library lot, is that in Ward 1?
No.
Okay. Yep.
It is not, but it's right near where they all come together.
Right.
Yeah. Core Spaces Project is not.
North Main Street?
Yes.
That development and discussion about what's happening along North Main fits into your issues of development.
That is, that's Ward 1. The Lower Town 1140 Broadway is a big chunk of Ward 1, over 6 acres in Ward 1. and things coming up are in Ward 1.
Now, you mentioned that in going door to door, you had you heard people's concerns about both, things like the police overview, but what are, other than development, were there any very specific neighborhood issues that came up that were clearly, just in that given neighborhood?
No, not so much, although maybe the deer management is something where I think that a lot of our deer population are in the north area of Ward 1, and so I think maybe some of the other wards that don't see a lot of deer.
Ward 1 and Ward 2 in that case, because Ward 2 is sort of the northeast part of the city, and deer don't stop at boundaries of wards for the most part, so in that sense it's going to cross over.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short break, come back and look at some of the issues, even in just the 6 weeks you've started, that are coming up. Ask our viewers to stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
CTN Sports, bringing local sports to you.
Did you know that CTN welcomes the members of the Ann Arbor City Council to Ward Talk? On the third Wednesday of every month, a different representative from one of the city's 5 wards joins us in the studio to discuss matters important to the people and government of Ann Arbor. Submit your questions for the next episode of Ward Talk by emailing ctn@a2gov.org or visiting our Twitter page @CTN Ann Arbor.
Hello and welcome back to Conversations. I'm speaking today with Ann Bannister, Ward 1 City Council member. As a new member on council, you mentioned that it could be a full-time position. you mentioned various meetings and everything. What committees did you end up getting appointed to, or what committees formally are you serving on?
Two of my main committees are the Environmental Commission
Okay.
and the Housing and Human Services Advisory
okay.
Board.
Okay. And does that handle, does the city still get state and federal funds for human services? And is that the committee that sort of oversees that?
Yes.
Okay.
They've been diminishing
Right,
and such.
But still, there's some determining where the money, what little we may be getting, where that goes, and what
yes.
is going to be the city's sort of statement in many ways of what they value as far as human services.
Yes. As a matter of fact, this first quarter of 2018, we'll be reading dozens of RFP proposals.
Proposals on providing
For the
various
money.
services. Okay.
Yes.
And then that recommendation, and following through, that recommendation from the committee goes to the full council ultimately?
Yes.
Okay. And is that then part of the full budget process, or is there a separate sort of determination of where that money or how that money will get spent?
That I will see,
Okay,
but I imagine it will come through the whole budget process.
Right, because that's late spring that is finalized,
And it's been evolving. We
Right.
had that meeting at the library, a presentation, and so it won't just happen all at once.
Right.
It's in process.
So those are the two major committees you mentioned. You have council meetings that meet, twice a month?
Yes.
You have working sessions twice a month? Or,
And as
varies,
need be, it almost
As
seems
need,
like.
okay. So chances are on Mondays you're there at least twice, if not 3 to 4 times a month.
Yes.
How often do the committees that you serve on, how often do those meet?
They are meeting monthly, but more often
Okay.
when for side
Oh,
committees.
especially right now with the determination of the budget, and that may not be
Yes.
as often. Other committees, are members of council expected, or do you avoid going to other committee meetings not to step on the toes of other council members, or how does that all work?
I've heard it both ways.
Okay.
But I think that I generally think it's good for
Yeah.
us because you can get a lot more in person than you can just from the TV
Right.
broadcast on YouTube. Although everyone can rewatch everything on YouTube, when you're in the room, you can see
Sure.
other.
The dynamics of what's going on.
Yeah, so I think it's good for council to
Right.
come as many as they can. So Planning Commission, or tonight is a Human Rights Commission meeting. Very important that many of the council members will be attending.
Right. Now, and you mentioned that one of the not just the development downtown, but transparency
Yes.
has, even in the 6 weeks that you've been officially on duty, has it been what you thought it was going to be? I mean, you can talk to people beforehand when you decide to run of what's it like, but till you experience it, it's,
Yeah. Well, I think it's been what I thought it was going to be like, but a lot more
Okay.
than I had even imagined. And I think one thing that's great about our city is that we do have a strong council. And so the council is independent, and we do have more voice, more strength to our voice than I had even realized.
Okay, yeah. And in looking at that voice, what have you found that you could say have come up, or they're coming up in the next couple months, that you think that the public needs to be aware to get more input in some ways from the council, or not from council, from the public before council might make a decision?
Yes.
What are some of the issues that you could say are not surprising, but you weren't necessarily expecting?
Well, maybe not things that I wasn't expecting. But I think what you're saying. What issues are coming up that I hope citizens will continue and participate to the fullest on many of the issues. The development projects. I would like for citizens to continue to speak out about our Broadway development as it goes forward, the at the
Lower
core,
Town, yeah.
Lower Town core spaces. On Pontiac Trail, we have a cottages at Barton Green that will be moving through Planning Commission. The police oversight, civilian oversight of policing, we need a lot of citizen input on that.
And where does that stand? Because there was some work already done.
Yes.
And is there going to be, or where do we stand with respect to a specific citizen group working directly with the police department?
Well, the taxpayers, we paid what, 200,000+ for an outside consultant group,
Right.
Hillard Hines, to prepare a recommendation for us, and so now we have that.
Okay.
And I think that report did not go so far as to have civilian oversight. So I'm hearing from a lot of Ward 1 people in email and phone and face-to-face discussions that they're feeling that more transparency on that, where the civilian.
When you say transparency on that, what do they mean and you mean about transparency with respect to the police oversight?
Yes. Well, I think the Civilian Oversight Board would want to have access to the same sort of records that the police chief Baird himself can see. So rather than the police policing themselves and saying, we investigated such and such incident and everything's fine, or we're fixing it, I think that this Civilian Oversight Board is considering, why couldn't they see those same records and weigh in as a way, Ann Arbor likes to be a leader in different things, and so the idea is that we could possibly be a leader in this area too.
Another area that issue that has been ongoing in the city for the last most likely 3+ years is pedestrian safety.
Oh yeah, thank you for bringing it up.
Well, at what, where do we stand? Because I remember seeing something in the media recently about the company who's over the street flashing lights is suing because some not copyright infringement, but where does all that stand? There was discussion of using additional money to do more different type of safety issues. Where does all that stand now?
Yes, well, I think there's sort of two things. One, there's mobility studies. At one of a couple meetings ago, we approved a mobility study, which mobility includes vehicles, buses, cars, bikes, and pedestrians. So that'll be for the Broadway development.
Okay.
And now many of us have said it's a year or two behind. Those sort of infrastructure studies and mobility studies should be before developments are approved. Many of us would think, but that is related to pedestrian safety, so more study on that. But also more money spent on the infrastructure. And then I'm hearing a lot from residents about Ann Arbor's unique pedestrian ordinance.
Right.
And while people support pedestrians being safe and having the right of way, we all know by driving around town that not all cars stop. So for pedestrian to be, especially young people who might not even be driving license age, stepping out into the road because one car stopped, if only half the cars are stopping, it's very dangerous.
Yes. And so, you have both what is the ordinance, the enforcement of that ordinance.
Yes.
And also what can the city do to help, you might say, make the ordinance more effective. And the reason I'm mentioning that is things like, I can think of areas where at night especially, it's difficult to see the crosswalk itself.
Right.
And to see if there's anyone along the side of the road ready to cross.
Right.
And so, at what point does the city have a responsibility to make the crosswalk as safe as possible for people to use?
Yes.
Yeah.
Residents are clamoring for that.
Yep.
Whether, even though many of them support the idea of pedestrians having the right of way, they're very concerned about
The-
safety. The
Now,
ultimate.
what else are you hoping in your first year, let's say, to have either you or the city as a whole address? What other things are sort of, now that you're on council, that you want to sort of orchestrate, so to speak?
Yes, well, I want to continue to amplify what the residents are feeding me as important issues. I want to try to bring as much transparency to all of the issues and communication on the issues as possible. I also, on the development projects, I want to continue to help amplify the voices of these important development projects that need to be, the Broadway development. I voted against that one,
Okay.
and I think that one is.
How do you hear from your constituents? I mean, do you see them at farmers market or just shopping or walking down the street, so to speak? Well, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, a bunch of ways. One, probably the easiest one for folks at home is my email, which is abannister@a2gov.org.
And that would be true for any member of council. And it's the first initial, last name at a2gov.org.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a link on the city's website where you can email all 11
okay.
at once, which
Right.
is a good idea in many cases. So you can email us. That's a really good way to reach us, because then we have the
record, yes.
a record, and we forward it to the city, and that's a great way. Phone, my phone number is widely.
Right. And that's also available on the a2gov.org website.
Yes, so you can text or phone me. I've had coffee hours at our traditional Northside Grill, and also at Electric Eye Cafe, and I'm adding more of those. I'm on Facebook. You can reach me that way. So you can
invite you to neighborhood group meetings. I mean, there were at one point over 100 different neighborhood groups, and how often they meet will vary, but clearly, being a part of the whole Ward 1 circus, so to speak, because so much is going on.
Yes, I think citizens shouldn't sit at home frustrated and wondering. Reach out to their council reps. Right. That's what we're here for.
Well, great. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon, and welcome both to City Council and to Conversations.
Thank you so much.
Thank our viewers for joining us today, and look forward to your continued support here on Conversations. Thank you.